Since 2008, Tasha has designed, instructed, and assessed curriculum for primary, secondary, and post-secondary institutions and organizations. Her humble roots began as a Girl Scout troop leader, where she first discovered her talent for designing activities and determining success through predetermined criteria. Shortly after, she pursued a master's degree in education, instructing in Title I schools, where Tasha was able to develop and refine curriculum designed skills to assess students in achieving high learning outcomes. Although she left the classroom after 10 years, Tasha's career as a curriculum engineer ventured into various industries, blossoming into VP of Program Development for a global corporation in which she trained medical professionals on essentials of holistic medicine. She was responsible for creating and aligning curriculum and assessing materials with subject matter experts, medical professionals from many specialties. Her expertise caught the attention of other entrepreneurs, so when Tasha ventured into solo entrepreneurship, they were eager to partner and have their dream courses made into reality. At this point in Tasha's career, she has assumed much experience by developing differing forms of curriculum to suit the needs of thousands of students and trainees, utilizing various software programs and technologies to develop engaging curriculum in conjunction with her K through 12 background has lended her talented toolbox. There isn't an LMS she can't quickly learn to master. As an entrepreneur, Tasha continues to refine her skills and talents by working with varied clients all over the United States. Mentoring those who wish to realize the true and full potential remains at the heart of Tasha's passion as an educator. And now I would like to present to all of you, Tasha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for inviting me, Debbie, and hosting this for the last couple of sessions. So we had a Monday session and today is our Wednesday session. And if you want to learn more about Debbie, you can go to effectivecannabis.com or effectivenewsletter.com or the newest website, debbiewimberly.com. So our presentation outline today is going to be, first, we're going to talk about marketing, get the marketing stuff out of the way, talk about the learning path, the courses, the sections that I have designed. Then we'll go into the objectives and the introduction for the course. We'll talk about, then we'll move into implementation, business development, and then we'll have our spinner winner. And so again, if you can just refrain from asking questions, save them until the end, but don't forget to write them down. Some of the questions I may answer in the presentation or address those questions that you might have. And then if you still have those questions at the end, then you're welcome to ask. And then we have our learning path here. So right now, everyone is here in February in the Jumpstart. So the presentation that you are going to see today is going to be the very beginning, the very introduction of that learning path. Then in March, I'm going to do a hard launch of the course. And that will include the course enrollments. And then the grand tour is bonus material. And so then that way, everything that I was not able to put into the course, I can still offer it and I can still have that information be beneficial for anyone who's looking to design or build courses. And then we'll have an engineering to impact lab. And what that lab is taking every entrepreneur from beginning to end to build and launch a course. And so providing the framework for the individuals. So this is a kind of one size fits all learning path. I understand that everyone has individual needs, right? And so how can I address those individual needs or answer the individual questions? The Engineering to Impact Lab allows for that. So it's basically a work jam is what I like to call it. It's just a work jam. We have a topic, we talk about different things, but the different things are for people to dedicate a solid amount of time per month sitting and working on developing their courses and the content and whatever it is that we're talking about at that time. And so the lab begins in April, then it will continue in May, June, and July. And then the idea here is that by the end of July, we would have our course launch party. Debbie and I are coming up with some different ideas about how to market everyone, how to market this. And then that session that we have would then be the jumpstart for the next section of the learning path, which would be the curriculum engineer marketing incubator. So how to market your courses, us banding together to promote each other on social media. This is the next step in the path, which is the grand tour, which will happen in March. And so again, this is taking you through the course, giving you the grand tour of the course, but then also providing additional bonus material that in order to make the course a specific price point, I had to be very discerning about which information I add in. And so again, there's just so much that for me to share, for me to help people to be successful and to bring their idea to reality, or for them to realize their full potential. And so I'm offering that little bit of bonus material. And then again, the hard launch of the course for everyone to have course access, and then for us to then be able to get started for April. The course itself is $99 until March 15th, and then it's $175. Some of the topics that I thought would be an interesting draw here, there are many more than this, but these are some. So we have business development with your course, how to build the course, but with your business strategy, your marketing strategy, and your business plan in mind. Choosing design tech, which includes how to use AI or what can you do with AI. A introduction to the design process, some of the things that you need to think about before you start designing, having data-driven instruction, so using feedback in order to develop your course. The intro to curriculum engineering, the actual engineering is going to happen in the impact lab, because engineering curriculum itself could be an entire course. So how could I integrate that in? How could I make that happen so that at least you all would be getting something, and then that would be what would go into the lab. There are tons of free resources. We're going to have that lab, and then the art of inquiry, which is asking questions. And I am available for one-on-one consultations if anyone wants to ask any questions. I do have my coaching links available. And then if you have 3 friends or 3 people that you know, 3 professionals that are interested in also designing courses, we have an offer where I'm offering a free 30-minute one-to-one for 3 paid referrals, and that's to go through the entire learning path. So from, let's say, March, April at the latest, all the way until July. And then here are engineering to impact lab sessions. So in April, that will be a needs assessment. What is it that everyone is looking for? What is it that everyone wants? And so this is a customized learning path with the exception of the first 3 sessions. So session 2 would be creating engaging learning experiences, which would be gamification, for example, how to create those within your course. What are some of the tools to use? And if you don't have those tools available, what can you do instead? Engineering curriculum, building your community and your culture. And then the rest of the sessions, with the exception of the launch party, so in June and July, those are completely group driven. So again, I will send out a cohort poll in order to get a better understanding of where people are at, what is it that they're looking for, and then I will design the sessions based off that. But also remember, again, that these are working sessions. So it's not that you come working on your curriculum at that exact moment. You need to be working on it outside of these sessions, but these sessions give you an opportunity to ask specific questions or to develop your curriculum in ways that you had not thought of. And then we do offer some additional workshops by demand. So if you want to do a Kindle Create, if you want to learn social media marketing, I had another fun idea last night about using narrative to develop your personal story, using the process that I used to create Debbie's website, DebbieWimberly.com, in order to really have the most effect on your audience when you're telling your story, and how your course flows from your story, from your business plan. And so everyone who is in attendance today will be, I guess, signed up, registered, put on the spinner to be the spinner winner. And so I'm looking for a curriculum engineer development team. So I'm looking for 2 people to help me to develop the course. I'm still working on fine tuning it. There are some downloads and a couple of videos that I need to still put in, but for the most part, the main part of the curriculum is complete. And so I need someone to help me review that curriculum, give feedback, and in return, then you would be able to retain course access for 1 year and then have free access to the grand tour. And then if you choose to attend the workshops, then you would also have that access as well. The only caveat is that I need to have your detailed feedback by March 2nd, so that by the time March 7th comes, which is the launch date of the course, all of that feedback I have taken and used to refine and develop the course, so that it's the very best that it can be before the actual launch. Debbie already introduced me, but a couple of things that I wanted to point out here is, so yes, I got started with Girl Scouts, but really what was the root of me getting started? And it was that I was working in Title I schools that didn't have any funding for curriculum whatsoever, and I had to create that curriculum. And so a lot of times I would go to Dollar Tree or Walmart and get books, activity books. I would make copies for my students. And then I had to use those materials, and I had to teach specific skills. And so how am I going to use the materials to teach these kids this thing that they need to learn? That's really the root of how I got started. And so I think that that is how I developed over time and in a variety of genres, because I had that very root experience where I had to create curriculum out of nothing. And so then once you do it enough times, it just becomes common knowledge. And then as I was in that global company and I was experimenting around, because for the most part, I had worked with adult learners in the past, but it was in a community college setting, or it was a small organization. It wasn't in a business setting. And so I was able to kind of play around, um, experiment what was going to be the best way to develop curriculum for professionals, especially because that was the majority of our target audience. We did have some patients. And so because I had worked with so many non-professionals in the past, the patient courses were actually easier. But it was really the professionals courses where I said, okay, this is a little bit new to me. This is not an experience that I've had. How do I take this and how do I shape what I already know into what is it that I need to do? And so again, after having done that a few times now, I'm just like, okay, I got it. I got it to where I can teach it to other people. And then just a little bit more about me. I have some books, I have some courses, I have my own business for small business support. I do a joint venture. I got a lot going on here. I do want to share from Monday, there was a testimonial from one of my friends and one of my clients. I'm building her course for her. She had already had all the content together, but she didn't necessarily know what to do with it. And so she had a testimonial, we recorded it. And so I just want to share that with you.
I had the program, how can I say? I know the content, I think as Tasha put it, but there's a lot to the technical and presentation and marketing of a program. So for the last 4 or 5 months, I guess, she's been, I like to call twinking up my program, separating it from making a workbook and guide, a separate workbook and guide that correlates with the different programs, combining it, making it flow and make sense, and setting up different levels of membership and how to join. And I've incorporated that into my website. So that's going to be where we're going to use it mainly to market. I'll market on my website and do some marketing on social media too, hopefully in March. I think we're about coming down to the end of it.
So as you can see, Linda has already gone through this process for the most part. And so when we first started out, she really didn't have any idea of how much effort that she was going to have to put into it. And so I walked her through that process. And now her course is a lot more cohesive. It's a lot more coherent. It's at a price point that people would value. They're still going to be getting a lot and learning a lot and having a much different experience than what Linda had created prior to her asking me to come and help her. Because prior to that, she had only videos and then some written material, but not very much. So we were able to reorganize all of that. So really there's a lot that goes into this process, but it's my hope that by giving you the path and helping you through the path, that you will find that it's easier than what you would think, but it's not the kind of thing that I would ever suggest that anyone try to just go out on their own and just wing it and try to do it, because there's so much that goes into it. There are certain steps to take before you start building the course, just in preparation to building the course, that you need to think about, because if you start building the course and you haven't reflected on some of these questions, then your course design may be different, or you may have to redesign parts of your course. And so just having these times where you can reflect on these questions is really helpful. So there's two parts to this. The first part is, then we'll talk about the art of inquiry in a little bit, but asking questions. So one of the things that I teach is how to ask questions, which I call the art of inquiry. There's actually a book that I studied when I was in school. And so it's the art of asking questions. And so I asked a very vague, very open-ended question. And so that's an example that I want to point out, is that when you're developing and you're designing a course, you want to ask very specific questions for the answer that you're looking for. There are too many objectives. And so a more precise question that I should have asked you to elicit the exact answer that I wanted, or that I was really assessing, or really what it is that I was looking for, is that, something along the lines of, depending on where you're at in the lesson, you would start off with something like, do you believe that there are too many objectives? Or take this list of objectives, you can turn it into an activity, and you can say, give me 3, give me 3, condense them down and make them 3. So the issue is that there are too many things. So yes, the way that the slide looks is that there are too many things, but that can also be overwhelming to your learners. And so if
too many
don't
words
have
and too many objectives is what you're saying. Like too much going on there to break it down. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you want to make sure that your learning objectives, the activities that your students or your learners are doing in order to reach the learning outcome, that they're also specific, they're also targeted. And so then the questions that you would ask would then flow from there. And so a more targeted question to ask would have been, how would you change this slide to have less objectives? And so then you turn it in also into a critical thinking exercise. So that would be one example of how you would not only ask a question, again, the art of inquiry, but also just for people that are starting out, because I have seen this. This is part of the reason why I made this slide, because I have seen this. And could I take these objectives and break them up into modules or put 2 in a lesson? Absolutely. But to have it all kind of up front, it's very overwhelming. I don't know what it is that I'm really supposed to be doing or what I'm supposed to get out of this, because there's so much going on. So it's not necessarily about the slide appearance, even though that's kind of how I wanted you to answer. It's more about the objectives, but you can see the demonstration that I'm trying to give here is that, you know, when focused on education, we got to be very targeted. Okay. So why is it a prime time to teach others to fish? And so, like I said earlier, the market is trending for people that want skills. And so how do we know that? What's the data that backs that up? And so in the National Center for Education Data Statistics, if we look at this red line, we can see that historic college enrollment is falling. What could be a potential reason for that? Well, if you come and you look at the average tuition, it's a lot higher than it used to be. So all the way back when I was graduating in undergraduate school in 2005, I mean, I don't ever want to say it's affordable. I'm looking at the in-state one because that's what most people choose. It was definitely more affordable than it is now. And so you have a lot of people that don't want to take on the debt. They don't want to, they want a shorter term situation. They need a lot more flexibility. And so they're looking to earn those skills. And just like me, I didn't need a degree to become an entrepreneur. I didn't need a degree to do graphic design or build websites. I learned from mentors that had those degrees. And so increasingly you see this trend, especially on YouTube, where you have a lot of people that are offering classes and doing things and teaching people their skills and what it is that they're looking for. And so again, it's a really prime time. How are you going to take advantage of it? And so this is the question that I have for you all. It's just a little bit open discussion. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, why is it important to have a well-structured course?
It looks professional and people see value.
Well, it's not just that they see the value, but they refer, because referrals are the #1 driver of business. And so you want to have a really well-structured course so that people gain the value from it and say to other people, hey, this will add value to your life if you come and you learn this skill, or you do this talent, or you do this thing. And so that's why, you know, and on Monday, I said again and again, you cannot just have videos up and call it a course. It doesn't always add the value that you think, and it's not necessarily education. And so I came up with, and we'll talk about curriculum engineer in just a second, but as to my knowledge, the concept of curriculum engineer doesn't exist, because it's a thing that I created based on my own personal experience of things that I have done. And so when I was researching all of the stuff for this course, I looked through curriculum engineer and I could not find any Google anything related to talking about being a curriculum engineer. And so this is taking a very mental process and a highly creative process, both of them equally engaging, and putting it together. I'm going to just run down a couple of definitions here, because these are fundamental principles that may get lost in the weeds is how I'm going to describe it. Because we're all coming from different backgrounds with different educational experiences. And so just to get everyone on the same page, let's talk about what is education. The traditional definition is knowledge, skill, and development gained from study or practice. But let's take it one step further. It's thinking, doing, and refinement. And so when you're teaching and when you're learning, no matter if you are the receiver or you are the one that's sending the information, you're constantly thinking, doing, and refining. How can I do this different? How can I learn this better? What's a different way that I can learn this? What's a different way that I can do this? And the same thing for the instructor. And so then with the methodology, it goes from I do, the teacher, to you do, the learner, to we do together. Whereas in some traditional course settings, you may have the teacher does it and then you go off on your own and do it and then come back and then you have an assessment. Did you learn that thing or not? But what is missing is that refinement process or that critical thinking process that happens when a teacher in the situational learning moment can do it, watch the student do it or the learner do it, and then make sure that the learner knows how to do it by doing it with them. And so when you're building a well-designed course, those are some of the things that you want to think about, because you don't just want to leave people sink or swim out there. You want to guide people through the process. And so then what is learning? Traditional definitions include knowledge acquired through experience, study, or being taught. But let's take it a step further. It's really the practical application and transference of skills and knowledge between tasks. If meaning is not there, if somebody doesn't want to learn something or they have no desire to learn something, they're not going to learn it. And we all have experienced that. And so when you create a meaningful learning experience for people, people learn, and people then take that knowledge and then they go do with it what they're going to do. And then someone will say, hey, where did you learn that from? And then you would say, oh, so-and-so's course. And so again, from a business perspective, you want to have a well-designed course because you want those experiences to be meaningful. You want the contact, the communication, the engagement, all of those things to be very meaningful. And so then what is instruction? It says here that it's a detailed information telling how something should be done, operated, or assembled, presented in a step-by-step and methodical way. So having your stair step, I learn a skill, and then that skill is a prereq for the next skill. That skill is a prereq for the next skill. But we need to take that one step further, because especially when you're doing something online, it needs to be an interactive phenomenon between the teacher, student, and instructional resources. Even though it's online, those things should be happening anyway. How are you giving your time and attention to your learners in order for them to understand or know for sure that they've got it? Because you don't want people walking away with misinformation and then spreading misinformation and then saying that it came from you. You definitely don't want that. And so the curriculum that is the totality of the experience in the educational process. And so it's the outline you create, the content that you add to it, the research, the what I call the amenities, the downloads, the handouts, the free resources, all of that. And if we take it a little bit step further for the purposes of what we're doing here, it's a standards-based sequence of planned experiences where students practice and achieve proficiency in content and applied learning skills. Curriculum is the central guide for all students as to what is essential for teaching and learning so that every student has access to rigorous academic experiences. And so what is rigor? I go into it much more in depth in the lab, because rigor has to be built into your program or your course of study, your learning path, whatever you want to call it. What it is scaffolding. And so you make the first lesson the basic introductory things, but then you have the next lesson a little bit harder. But you don't want to make it so hard that it's outside the reach of the learner. You have to make it, there's like a Goldilocks zone. And so you want to make the rigor right in the Goldilocks zone where it's challenging and meaningful, but not so challenging that people will walk away and that people become engaged, because actually how we learn is through mistakes and challenges. And so how do you build that rigor into your course of study? That's important. And you do that by focusing on what the learning outcomes are. And so the learning outcomes are based on the skills that you want to target, the objectives. That's the reason why you need to have really solid, specific, clear objectives, because then your learning outcomes, because we start with the learning outcome in mind and then we work backwards, it all falls from there. So then now let's say you're officially a curriculum developer. Hooray, pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. But are you really? A curriculum developer is someone who works with existing curriculum to make improvements, train teachers, and more. So that's not any of you, because you don't already have existing curriculum that you're making improvements to. So you're creating your own, right? So with this slide, then we're getting a lot closer to that definition of curriculum engineer. And so curriculum design. So you can design curriculum and you can never teach it. There are people out there that do that. And so it is the process of organizing instructional units or blocks within a course or class in a deliberate and systematic way. So that's your modules, your lessons, your weeks, your units, whatever, however you decide to break it up, sessions, what have you. And so you can design that and then you can walk away from it. You would be a curriculum designer. That's what most of them do. They design curriculum and then they just sell it to whomever. That's all your major educational curriculum publishing companies. And then instructional design. You don't have to design curriculum in order to design how the curriculum will be taught. So instructional design is designing or creating the way the curriculum is then delivered. And so the traditional definition is the creation of instructional materials by carefully considering how students learn and what materials and methods will most effectively help individuals achieve their academic goals. So that's how you design the lesson, how you develop your content, how you deliver the material, and then how you assess the students. But we're still not there yet for what we're doing. So then when you put them together, because you can get a degree in curriculum development and instruction, and so what those people do, they create curriculum and instructional materials and the methods and strategies that teach that material to maximize the learning outcomes. Those people are not assessing learners. They create curriculum, they create then the instruction. So here's the book, here's how to teach the book. I train you, now you go and do it, good luck. Okay, so now we are curriculum engineers. And so a curriculum engineer is the practice of using the engineering design process to design and create curriculum and instructional materials that generate optimal learning outcomes by utilizing an efficient and practical pedagogy, which is the art of teaching. And so in education, what that curriculum design process looks like is ask, which is a needs assessment. Imagine, so how do I get from what people need to creating a thing that actually delivers? Then you create it, then you assess those people, and then you say, okay, number one, did I deliver in an effective way? And number two, did they actually learn what they were supposed to learn? And then you move from there, you improve from there. With the engineering design process, you have to research a thing, which you would in curriculum engineering anyway. You design it, you build it, you teach it, and then you assess. And so combining together those two processes, then you have a curriculum engineer. So who is ready? Angel, you said you were ready. Debbie's ready. Amy's writing. With the pedagogical approach. So this is your art of instruction. This is something that I didn't have a chance to say on Monday, but it is really the driving force of everything that you're going to be doing here on out. You have to understand, how do you feel, think, believe about teaching and instruction, because if you have an adversarial relationship, like let's just say your kids' teachers are not that great, and so you think all teachers are horrible, are you going to be an effective instructor? Yeah, of course, right? Because you have a negative mindset about the way that teaching and learning happens. You have to separate yourself away from that situation, and then you have to say, okay, if I were doing this, how would I do it? What would create the best outcomes for that? So for me personally, I have a very student-centered curriculum. So I always ask, what is it that you want me to teach you? What kind of workshop do you want? What do you want me to present on, or what do you want me to talk about? I'm also very reflective, so I'm very open to a lot of constructive criticism, a lot of feedback, because I want to know what it is that people want to learn, because I'm a helpful, nurturing type of entrepreneurial business archetype. So that fits with me. And then also very integrative and constructivist. So constructivism is that everyone together in your collaborative environment creates and constructs the knowledge as people are learning. And so that's how, hi, Angel's granddaughter that I've heard so much about. And so you want to really sit and think about, okay, how do I want to instruct? And that is incredibly important, because that is going to be either your business model, if creating curriculum is only your business, or it's going to become a part of your business plan, because all of how you teach, who you are teaching, all of that has to go into your marketing strategy, because the type of teacher that you are is going to resonate through to your learners, and you need to make sure that they understand exactly the type of teacher you are, because maybe you're not for them. It's not that your subject is not for them, but maybe you are not for them. You want to have learners that resonate with you, because you're going to have the greatest learning outcomes, because those people are going to benefit the most, because you're reaching them on the way that they learn as much as you possibly can. I mean, you do build a one size fits all as best as you can. There are outliers, but then how do you individually address those outliers, right? That would be another part of your pedagogical approach. So when it comes to evaluating platforms, I have either experienced or worked on all of these. So once upon a time ago, I built a course on Thinkific. My courses are held on Teachable. I built the company that I used to run. I built everything on Mighty Networks. A curriculum company from somehow found me. I don't know, but they were soliciting me. EduCity is a Canadian company. Those people that own it, the CEOs, directly reached out to me and said, hey, we want you to test drive all your stuff on our platform. When they were building it, it's two software engineer guys from Canada. And so you really have to choose what's best for you, because you know, Amy could build her course on a platform and it is the most amazing thing. So let's say she built hers on Mighty Networks. Okay. It's working for her. She has a great community. It's thriving, but mostly it's because of her topic. And so you have to choose a platform that matches what your expertise is, what your topic is, what your audience is. All of that is going to go into your business plan. So again, even before you start engineering your curriculum, you have to think about, where am I going to build this thing? Because these are the considerations that you have to take into account. How user-friendly is it? So how many people do not have the tech skills that you might think that they do? That was one of the things that I came across, was that I thought that, you know, I'm a digital native. So I grew up with the internet. I grew up with computers. The first computer came out when I was in kindergarten. So for me, I forget sometimes that there are people even my age, so let's not go there with the age thing, even people my age that don't have experience with computers. And to me, I can't fathom that. But at the same time, I have had a very different path than people. And that's something that you need to keep in mind is at the most basic level, someone who knows nothing about a computer, are they able to utilize your courses? Because some of you may have courses for patients, right? And so how are you going to adapt your platform to meet those needs? Is there an app for that? That's a big thing for me. How easy is it to navigate and engage for you and for your learners? The biggest thing for me, which is why it's the biggest one, is does it do what I want it to do? So am I able to engage with students the way that I want? Because I have built for primary, secondary, and post-secondary education institutions and organizations, and just on my own, I need to have a specific level of student engagement because I know that that is an important engagement piece, or that's an important piece, right? And then for your IP to be protected, should you have drip content versus open access? Is there a community embedded, or do you have to go to Facebook and open something up? I'm telling you, it's one more thing to manage, and it's not something that you want. You want your community all in one place. And then as a business owner, you want to think about, well, how can I grow? How much are the transaction fees? Is there a free trial? Right now, I'm on the free trial because I want to make sure that this is the platform for me. Is this where I want to build and grow? Is this going to be something that I can take long term? Because I can tell you right now, it is not an easy lift to move your curriculum from one platform to another. And there are some platforms like Fresh Learn or Learn Fresh that they do it for you, but you pay. You have to pay, or you have to take the time to do it yourself. So it's really important to do the free trial, even if it's 14 days, get a feel for it, see if this is going to work for you before you go ahead and sign up for the full thing. Make sure that you're scaling appropriately. Is there a limit on the number of students per the pricing plan? Because if you're on a free plan versus the basic plan versus the pro plan, what can be sold? So we can talk about CBD here. So you cannot sell a CBD course. It does not matter that it's an educational piece. They look at it exactly the same as if you were selling flour. So you have to become very creative with how you are naming your course, marketing your course, what's in your course in certain cases. Stripe and Square are usually the payment processor for all of these platforms. And so then you may have to plan for a workaround in certain situations. And then can I provide supplemental materials? Because not every platform will allow you to provide supplemental materials. What does your curriculum look like to begin with? Well, the very first thing is that your curriculum what it looks like is solely dependent on what your learning outcomes are. You have to start with a goal. What is it that I want my students to achieve? You have to be that farsighted. Then you say, what activities are going to lead up to that? And so it's really fundamental to know who your learners are. So that's your target audience, and what goals are being set, which is your audience demand. A learning outcome is a measurable result or skills a student should be able to demonstrate after completing a learning experience. Roughly, you should have one learning outcome for your entire course, maybe two, max, because then you have all the objectives that go along with each one. And so your objectives help to determine the proficiency that your students are gaining through your course or your learning path. And so there was a question before about, well, how do I break down my course into small bite-sized kind of pieces, right? How do I take the module or take all my content and break it up into modules and units and lessons and things like that? And so that's called vertical articulation. So how are you up here, we have learning outcome. Here you are at the bottom of the stairs. And so then I have a learning task. What is it that I'm going to do? And remember, we have to build in rigor. So here I give the basic information, the foundational information. Then I have a learning task and I make it a little bit more rigorous. And then have I met an objective or not? Maybe you meet the objective at the assessment. That's where you would test for, are they meeting the objectives? Once they've met all the objectives, then they have met the learning outcome. So it all folds together. The 6 stages of curriculum development, traditionally, I do not follow this. So I always tell people follow the recipe first. And then once you get a taste for it, then you can make it your own way. So this is the traditional, and then I'll share with you what my process is. And so the traditional model is you set your goals and objectives, then you do a needs assessment, then you design your curriculum, then you implement it, then you evaluate it, and then you revise it. And your goal is always changing. And so here, why the traditional model is not sufficient is because your main goal, not the goal for your learners, but your main goal is that students effectively learn the material and implement the strategies and produce the outcomes they desire. As market trends change, that learning outcome is going to change slightly. And so you have to really envision, how can I make an adaptable, flexible, rigorous curriculum that is going to meet the changing needs of my learners over a period of time? This traditional model is made for a curriculum that is being used for 10 years, 15 years. Your curriculum might change every 6 months or yearly, depending on what type of situation you have, like what type of course you have here. And then again, the art of ink. And so we have 2 different types of assessments. So we have the formative assessment, which measures how a student is learning during a course of study. So that may include in your learning tasks. It could be just non-graded quizzes or something like that, just to give you an idea, right? This is where that feedback would be effective for you. Is, are students grasping what I'm trying to teach them? Are they missing something? Do I need to go back and reteach? Because again, teaching is situational. So you want to be right there in the weeds with your students to support them and help them along the way. Maybe you have, you're doing a certification program and you have to observe people, or they have to record and you have to watch the observation and you have to give feedback. Or you can have summative, which would be end of unit exam, end of course exam, projects. And so in my course that I have built, there are no quizzes, there are no end of unit exams, there's not me observing necessarily. Yes, there are learning tasks and activities. I wouldn't call them assignments because I'm not grading them. So my course is set up on a summative assessment, which is a culmination project. And the culmination project is the course, right? And so has the objective been met? Yes, because you have a course. That's my standard of measure. And then Debbie and I were talking previously about rubrics. And so I will say this in short about rubrics. Rubrics are your gold standard depending on what type of course you have. And so if you are doing a course where you need to do some heavy evaluation, so when I had the nurse training program and I was training nurses to then go out into their community and provide services to patients, that's where you want to definitely have a rubric, because you can't just watch a patient interaction and then say, oh yeah, that looks great. Yeah, you're done. You have to have a specific set of criteria that have to be met in order to say, yes, this person has proficiency or they don't. Rubrics also cover you in the event that someone is just like, oh, well, you just made it up that I didn't pass. Well, no, here's the mountain of evidence, because I have your assignments, I have your quizzes, I have your observations, I have your interactions, I have all of this data that then goes into using the rubric as part of the evaluation process. And so those are also called artifacts. So you would have your artifact, you would have your interview, you would have the rubric, you would have a discussion around what that looks like. But every place that I have ever taught in or was a student of had rubrics as a very important part of skills mastery, because that's what we're looking for here is skills mastery. But again, would it make sense in your program? It may or may not, right? So it just depends. The amenities. So these are the things, the materials and the resources that enhance the learning experience by creating meaningful, engaging tasks, further learning, and a variety of learning experiences. And so your amenities, you're going to have some in your course that are free. Then you're going to have some that are paid. And so with some of the challenges that you might face, and I have to be very upfront and honest about all of these things, is that creating an online curriculum can be difficult if you have no experience. It was very challenging for me to take something that I have been doing on autopilot for a dozen years or more, and also have done at numerous levels, and then take something that also, for the most part, you need a master's degree to do, and then take it and make it a beginner's level thing. Can I do it? Yeah, sure. But it still is an effort on my part. And so if it's an effort for me, then someone who has no experience whatsoever, it can be really daunting. It can be really difficult. And so, I'm just going to say, you can see once you start to engineer curriculum, you will really start to see who's doing it well and who's doing it not well. And then you'll see how much effort, because for me, it's a self-reflection. The amount of effort that I put into building a course and instructing others is directly proportional to the way that I feel about my learners. So I'm putting into my learners what I want to gain back, right? And so with certain types of courses or curriculum that's out there, you can see there's not really a lot of effort. And so as a learner, that says to me, you don't want to invest in me. And so you want to have something that says, I am invested in you learning this material. It's important for me to help you advance in whatever your goal is. I'm here for you, right? And so then addressing the diverse needs of learners and designing adaptable curriculum can be difficult, because I only have 2 spinner winners, but then I have to take those 2 and say, okay, this is my bell curve, right? This is the bell curve here. And then finding and developing resources and materials. If you have a topic that, let's just say angel, menopause, and cannabis, right? Yeah, the majority of the research has been coming out in the last 5 years, but before that, there was nothing. And so you have to not only find all of this material, you have to organize it in a very coherent way. And the material that you have may not be coherent. It may be from here and here and here and here, and you have to pull it all together into one place and then make it manageable and make it fit and make it flow. The platform you choose may not allow you to create the activities or offer the features that you'd like. That has happened to me. I've had to limit my offerings because I didn't have the platform that would allow me to do the offerings I wanted. Keep your curriculum updated. This is one of my biggest problems. Marketing is another one of my big problems. Platform changes, limit features you once had access to. That happened to me. That's why I put it in here. Teachable has a really good free version, but they had an even better free version a few years ago, and then they scaled back. And then their assessment capabilities, because once upon a time ago, Mighty Networks didn't have a quiz option. I had to create all of the quizzes in type form, and putting together the automated flow of a quiz in type form was just enough to drive every human on the planet insane. Let me just say, it was not easy to come up with that. And so, again, these are some of the things that I want you to keep in your mind, because if you choose a platform and you're like, yes, this is it, and then you really start building and start engaging, and then you find out this is not it, that's a really heavy lift. It's either going to cost you a ton of time or a ton of money to move, or both. So making sure that you're choosing the right platform up front is crucial. I cannot stress that enough. How to evaluate your course. So like I said, what you put in to it is what you are going to get back out. But if you design a course and you slap an $1,800 price tag on it, so like, for example, with my course, if I would have said, oh yeah, it's $1,800, no one's signing up, right? And so think about these types of things, is that, are you here trying to get rich quick? Because this is not the learning path for you. This is not what that is. This is building something sustainable over a long period of time that yields results over a long period of time. So something that is long lasting, long term. Think about, why does sharing your expertise matter? Why are you doing this in the first place? Because that right there helps you to have a foundation for how much you're going to value your course at. What would you pay for the course that you just built? Then are you able to pay for the course that you just built? Because we have to be realistic about the economy and everything that's going on right now. And so those are the two questions that I start with is, what is it worth? And would I pay this for what this is if I had the money for it, right? And then what are all the amenities and all that kind of stuff that we talked about before, but also think about, what is the upfront cost? You have your time. How are you going to continually engage? Are you building a community college versus university course versus the tutorial? What is it that you're building? You have to size these things. How are you showing value? And then how does it fit into your business plan or your marketing strategy? And then we have just a couple more and we're done. So what does my process look like? So my process is more like layers of an onion, where I start with the learning goal and I say, okay, what's the objective here? Not the objective, sorry, the goal. What's the goal here? What is it that I want my students to achieve? What is it that I expect them to do by the end of this course? Then I start with the vertical articulation. So what is the outline? How is it organized? How is it structured? What topics go first, next, last? I prioritize those things. All I have at this point are just words in a list. Then I go into adding the content in. And so again, adding in that rigor. Now, how do I make that information in a stair-step motion, right? Making a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder, more engaging, more activities. What is it that needs to happen? So then I do all my research. Here is where I develop my objectives, because I don't want to develop my objectives too early, because if I develop them here, then by the time I find and create all the content, the activities that I have chosen may not be possible. So I wait until a little bit later to do my objectives, and then the learning tasks. So then after everything is written, all the content is done, then I go back and say, okay, how can I offer more value? How can I make this concept more clear? How can I provide something that people can look back to? How can I make this fun? And how do I know that people are learning? Then I go back and add those things in, and then the evaluation process, which would be getting people in, taking the course, revising, doing the final evaluation, and then launch. And then I have a friend that she has a platform called Kuwaiti Simplified that she launched about 3 to 4 months ago. This screenshot is actually old. She has over 200 followers on YouTube now. So with just in a few, sorry, this is on Instagram. I'm talking about here on YouTube. So just and at that time she had 9 videos and she had 148 subscribers. And so she really dialed into, and she had a really niche market. It was only married women who were married to Kuwaiti men. She lives in Kuwait. And so through her taking her time, so it took her 2.5 years to build this before she launched it 3 to 4 months ago. And this is how she's taking off. Yes, she has a degree in marketing. But what she's been able to do with her platform, and then here is a text message that she sent me where she said that in the first 2 cohorts, she generated more than $4,000. And so this is what I'm talking about that slow, meticulous process of building something that is long-term. If you want to throw up something just to get something on there and charge 20 bucks for it, go ahead. But is that a long-term sustainable income? No. You want to build something that's robust. You want to build something that is really sustainable. She's in a group with this guy who owns this company, and he said that so he launched his around the same time as her because they were in some kind of incubator thing. And he had 44 videos only and over 500 subscribers. And this is just in a few months. And then all of 2024, he had over $500,000 in revenue, teaching people how to put solar panels on their houses themselves because people don't want to pay anymore. They want to do it themselves. And then I do have some resources on my YouTube channel, Naturally Inspired Media. If you go to the playlist for the Startup Business Mentorship, I do have some videos and some resources there you guys can check out. And then how to get in touch with us. It's me at naturallyinspiredmedia@gmail.com. You can go to my website. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can see all my cool stuff on Linktree that I have built, done. There's a video of me and my kids on TV with the news. You can look at that link there. I just try to give a picture of who I am so people can get to know me because I'm actually a really private person. And then you can reach Debbie at team@effectivecannabis.com, or you can reach her at Debbie Wimberly on LinkedIn, effectivecannabis.com, effectivenewsletter.com. And then if you want to become an ECN advocate, I encourage everyone to sign up to do that. And that's effectivenewsletter.com/advocate. And so I'm going to ask a couple of these questions here. So Amy, I'm going to ask you, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So how would you know that your course is effective?
Well, I would probably use a rubric and ask a series of questions and have a scale for each item. Like,
Okay.
like to what degree do you feel you've reached the objective of engaging your audience, of audience engagement? And I would say something like 1 to 10, and I would ask for them to quantify how effective they think they were in engaging their audience, their enrollees in their course. And then I would, out of 100 points, I would see how effective on all these points of my goals and my objectives they felt they measured up. And I probably would also ask for the most valuable feedback I ever get is when it's personal and it's narrative. So part of the culmination project for me would be saying from like you do, based on your own experience, because they've created content, they've created a course. So in the process of that creation, I would ask them to share with me what they've gained and how they value the effectiveness that they've been for their students. And I really would also include a self-evaluation to evaluate the course and my methodology, because that would help me improve in delivery the next time. My content and everything might be the same, but it always can be improved. And I would ask them, how can I improve this? What was your favorite part of the course? What was, something you had a challenge understanding? And in them reflecting on their reception of all this, I would gain how effective was I in delivering it.
Yeah. Well, and I had a professor that we had to do a self-reflection as a major part of our project grade. And it was, so there were these little diary entries that you had to do. And then you had to go back and you had to read through the diary entries. And then you had to do a huge project around that. And then that huge project, and then your regular huge project, all of that went together. And so it was, piecing together these parts, but it was so valuable for me because I got to see how I could grow and change over the course of a process. And so, and I hadn't realized how much I was going to change. And so having a summative assessment as a self-reflection as a summative assessment is just as valuable as having an exam, for example, right? It tells you different levels of information. If you're planning to continue to work with those people, then absolutely self-reflection is going to be crucial, right?
I
And
think
then,
so.
oh, go ahead.
No, I think that's wonderful, that journal idea or diary.
Yeah.
You know, that diary to me is keeping it up as you're going through the course. So if we're requiring a diary, I think that would be great, because that way it's of the moment, it's immediate reactions. And then I
Yeah.
would also, I would advise, and I find this, I was asked recently in a course I'm taking, what do you people need? What do you need? What are we not providing? And I said, I'd like you to pair me with an accountability partner.
Yeah.
And
And
truly, I mean, Debbie's shaking her head.
yeah.
Debbie and I met in breakout rooms, you know, and it was
Yeah.
through the breakout rooms that complete strangers became colleagues and friends and
Yeah.
co-creators and motivators. And there's so many times when, Debbie, gives me that little prod, like, like a stun gun, that'll say,
Yeah.
come on, girl, how are you doing? What happened today? Are we on schedule? Are you this? Are you that? And she's like my little conscience. So that accountability partnership, I know sometimes it's risky just putting strangers together, but you could get the greatest outcomes. And that's part of your course philosophy, that you're going to attract people and you're going to, create out of them leaders. And
Yes, exactly.
I think the accountability that comes with, for example, best who I would be best paired off with in your student pool. And if you
Yeah.
said, Amy, I think you and Debbie, would be good partners to work together, and we have each other's phone numbers and we could collaborate on homework, or just, it might not work. I mean, not everybody's that amenable or that accountable, but I really find that hand holding makes a lot of difference. And it's not just hand holding, but we're in this together. And I mean, that's also part of what your curriculum is going to be. It's going to be it will require that people who are in your course want to learn together and want
Yeah.
a positive climate of learning. Not that you're in this course, but you're in a vacuum. And it's just
Yeah.
me and Tasha, and that's it.
Yeah. And yeah. And that, so going back to my anthropology degree, that's how humans learn. We learn in groups. And so learning in isolation isn't the most optimal way. And so that's why I created the lab. We didn't know what we were going to call it before. I was like, but we have to have something where everyone can come together and hold everybody accountable and keep everybody else on track, and that we do it together, because again, this process is not an easy process. You really can't just, like I said, you I will say a million times, you cannot just create videos and throw them up and call it education. You can't. And so if you're struggling with a certain part, then you can turn over to someone else who's essentially in the same boat as you in a way. I mean, your topic may be different, but you're in the same boat where you can turn and you can say, you know, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. Can you take a look at this and let me know? And then you also feel vulnerable. You can take risks, right? That's part of that, creating that safe environment, right? So that you know that the other people that are in with you also are invested in learning from you as much as you are learning from them, and it's a reciprocal relationship between everyone. And I'm a fan of all boats rise. So when we work together, we create a thing. Let's just say it's a thing where when we're building the course together, we're marketing together, it really, it becomes so much more than a community, right? It becomes so much more than that. And so, you know, if let's say a year from now you're doing courses and you're really struggling, then you can turn to the other people in the group and say, hey, what am I doing wrong here? Maybe there's a market trend. Maybe, you know, there was some piece of news that some social media platform, you know, got shut down and that's no longer available and you had no idea about it, right? And so you can reach out and you can still have a network of people that you can interact with. So and they can help you to be reflective. They can be that reflective piece for you. So I like that you would want to be a reflective practitioner, because that I'm biased, that's how I am. That's just me. So Angel, I'm going to ask you really quick and then we're going to move on. How do learners use assessment to adjust their learning? So how does the learner inside your course taking your content and doing your quizzes, how do they take their quizzes and how do they adjust their learning based off of what you have created?
So
You're like,
personally,
"Woo,
for
those
my
are big shoes."
courses,
Yep.
okay, so
Now you already designed the course hat on, you're already the curriculum engineer, you already launched the thing, you already got learners in. How do you know that your learners are learning?
So for me, I'm going to be building a couple of different. One is going to be a a group, but the other one is going to be just a self-paced, self-taught. So I think for the both of them, though, it's going to be a culmination project after every module or after every meeting. Then that way we can make sure that what they are putting into the time with me and learning about our specific subject for that module, they get the hands-on. They get to do the trial and error kind of
So they
thing.
take the risk. So, so I said, so they take the risk, right? So that they want to take a risk in their learning, right? And
Yeah.
so how would they adjust their learning based on your assessment feedback? So let's say someone didn't do very well. How are they going to make an adjustment to their learning? Because they have to be responsible for themselves as a learner too. It can't just be all on you. If someone walks away from your course and says, I didn't learn a thing, that has to go into deeper evaluation, because was it that content wasn't meaningful? Was it not engaging? Was it a learning style? Like, there are numerous factors, right? That if someone is saying, I'm really struggling to get this, how might you think that they might need to make adjustments to themselves based off of your feedback?
Well, number one, I'm going to make sure that they have all of the tools ahead of time to be able to do that. And then if they're still struggling, you know, we'll talk about it. We'll have those conversations where, okay, well, what happened? Why do you think that this happened? And how are we going to get it to what we need to get it So having those
I love
effective
it.
conversations.
I love it. Yay. See, you're already on your way.